Welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Sean Heath, and today I have a pleasure of having a conversation with the CEO and founder of Crisari Capital Management, Chris Hotze. Chris, how are you today?
Hey, Sean. Great to be with you today.
I have to say I'm really excited about this. I love talking with people whose career path hasn't been seamless. I like people who've gone through struggles and use that as a way to sort of stretch your muscles and succeed. Your path has been interesting, I think would be a delicate way to put it. Tell me how you actually got into the real estate field.
Well, it started, first of all, great to be with you here in Dallas today. Very interesting. Started out with my dad. My dad started in real estate when he was 50 years old. Usually on a Saturday morning, we had cartoons that we would watch, and then about 11 o'clock, I'd get bored. So I figured out that it was a lot more fun to go with Dad because it always meant that I got a free lunch. And he always brought his dog with him. So I'd want to be with my dad and with the dog. And so we would go out, and my dad would actually go to these rent houses. And it was so much fun to be with him because I saw him work. And it was always interesting because we'd go to a different house, a different property. And he worked hard. He'd climb up into attics. He'd always ask me to help him. And I'd bring tools up to him. And it was just something that I was a part of my life, being a part of rent houses. So that's how I got into it. That's how I started. But I actually didn't start in the business originally when I first got out of college, because when I got out of college in 1990, Texas was in a really bad place in terms of real estate. So I actually did not get into the business until about 10 or 12 years later.
So real estate for you wasn't really a career. It's just part of your life.
It's actually a part of something I think about on a daily basis. I always see properties, I always look at transitions of neighborhoods, because when my dad started buying real estate, he bought in an area that people thought was a slum. They thought it was a bad area of Houston. And ultimately, he's buying properties that were old, quaint houses that were built in the 1920s, and ultimately that became a very desirable part of Houston. And so I got to see, as I grew up, things transition, and so it gave me this visual of where things go in the future. When I was young, I got to see it, and it was very valuable to me, and it gave me a lifelong lesson to really just have a mindset of ownership. And I'm actually writing a book right now called Mailbox Money Mindset. And it's a book about really understanding how you buy property and manage property. And it's a culture of ownership. And my dad had that. And that was something that he gave to me.
It sounds like you absorbed some lessons, and maybe this book is a way to maybe organize your thoughts, maybe collate sort of the knowledge that you've gained from him?
For a long time, I was working so hard and that I didn't really realize how much my dad was able to accomplish. But I went back and I looked at it and I said, there's a lot here that he accomplished. So I started breaking it down. And a friend of mine in Seattle, Paul Akers, up in Bellingham, Washington, helped share with me some of the things that he did with his dad. And we started sharing some of the things that our dads did that impacted us. And I made a video on it and put it out on YouTube, and it was well received. And I thought, and Paul called me, said he loved the video, and next thing you know, I did another video. So there were little short 1-minute videos about my dad and things that he taught me that are still classic, educational tools that everyone, I feel like, needs to know. And I started, sharing those out there, and pretty soon I did come up with little segments of things that I learned from my dad. And it's been extremely helpful to go back and retie and reconnect with my dad. He's been gone now for 22 years. And it's been very powerful for me to then kind of realize why I am where I am in the business world.
Do you find that some of the lessons that you were able to remember when you were putting this book together, do you find some of those lessons have reinvigorated you or maybe refocused you to something maybe you were a little lax on, or something you didn't realize was as powerful as it is?
There were a lot of things that I was doing that I didn't know why I was doing, and they were actually just true disciplines that my dad had. Each one of these little things had a big impact on the way that I do business, and it gave me more confidence because I saw what he accomplished, and and where he came from, which was an awful place. Oklahoma City in 1933 in the Great Depression, no jobs in sight. He didn't have any money. It was a long way for someone to come to where he ended up getting. And he did it in a way that was very disciplined. And so when I start this process and been working on it now in this business for 20 years almost, I look back and say, a lot of this is the same pattern. A lot of this is based on the same pattern, even the same area of town. It's kind of interesting.
I'd like to actually talk about the industry just for a moment. Your father didn't really start this path until, like you said, he was 50. Most people when they're 50 they're pretty established, they're rolling along, and they're kind of thinking about when they're retiring. Real estate is a very critical part of anybody's retirement plan. Where are you going to live when you don't work anymore? How do you approach or help people approach that sort of thought process? How did you get some insight from your dad in watching him in how to get ready for that next part of life?
When he retired, he showed me a check that was his pension check. And he said, "Chris, I just want to let you know, with all the kids we still have to put through college, I could not make it on this pension check." It was something that resonated, particularly later in life, that you have to do something beyond your work to set yourself up for a retirement. As I got older, how did he retire at 62 years old and still put 5 more kids through college? And the way he did it was he had rent houses on the side. So he always knew he had an obligation to take care of his family. And that, to me, showed me that you had to have self-reliance. And self-reliance is so easy not to have nowadays because you get college debt right off the bat. People are giving you credit cards left and right. You come into your new job, they give you a 401k, everyone sits down with you. You don't have to think about anything. My dad was the opposite. He didn't have a 401k. They didn't have those back in those days. College debt, he actually had to work in the oil fields at night to pay his way through Oklahoma University. He didn't have that, so he was relying on himself. He actually sent money back to his mom when he was in college, and he didn't get married until after she was gone because he was responsible for his mother as well. So he was always responsible for other people, and he took it extremely serious. It's from an era that's past, but a lot of these lessons that are learned from that era still apply today. When you go out and become an entrepreneur and start buying real estate, developing real estate, putting people in real estate investments, of course you're going to go through some choppy things because you have to go out and learn it yourself. Right? Even though I was with my dad, there were so many other people along the way that I learned from too. So he taught me so much, and then there were other people I picked up along the way that taught me other things. And so I would go ask people for help. And all throughout my life, I asked for help, and my dad said, "Listen, if you ask people for help, that one word, for whatever reason, is extremely powerful." And so all through my path of getting in the real estate business, it's been really an education of other people helping me. It's just listening to them and learning from them. And so a lot of what I'm doing right now is to help others. And so writing the book, identifying with my dad's past, helps people understand that there's a part of me that's giving back for those people who gave to me in the past. It's pretty cool.
I want to say I really appreciate you taking the time today and sort of helping me find out about this book you have coming out. I'm very excited to read it, and I don't say that lightly. I'm very excited to have a chance to read the book. Thanks for your efforts, and definitely thanks so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Really good to be with you today.